I've been meaning to make this video for about a week now, but I haven't really had the time until kind of just now. And I wanted to actually talk about a couple of things I read when I was reading the Overlord light novel. Now, I'm going to quickly do a disclaimer real quick. If you're still watching the anime and you want to stay spoiler-free and not know what's going to happen very soon in the anime or might not happen in Season 1 in general, I recommend you not to continue on with this video because it will spoil you. And I don't want to spoil you if you do like Overlord and you want to be spoiler-free. But I will tell you one thing before I go into spoiler territory. When it comes down to the presence or the presentation of Overlord when it comes to the anime and light novel, it's very similar. There is some things that are different, but it still contains that presence of Overlord from the light novel. So I feel like Madhouse is doing a good job with what they're doing with the anime. So enough of that. I want to say right now I'm giving you all 5 seconds. If you don't want to be spoiled, I want to start, laying out spoilers in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stato. Okay, so spoilers are beginning now. Up to Volume 3 and maybe some of Volume 4, just to clarify. Okay, so Volume 3. Shalltear Bloodfallen versus Ainz. This right here, that fight, I want to see in the anime so bad. I really want to see that in the anime. What I witnessed in that fight, or not what I witnessed, what I read, technically, because there was no animation or anything, but what I read of that fight, it was incredible. Because we got to see Ainz, or Momonga, push himself to the limit to beat Shalltear Bloodfallen. And reading that fight was definitely one of the best moments I've seen of Overlord yet. That was the best moment in the pinnacle of what I've seen so far, besides the Clementine stuff in Volume 2, but I will save that for later. The thing is, when it came to Shalltear Bloodfallen and Ainz's fight, there was just this sense of danger in the fight, because Ainz took off his ring to where he couldn't resurrect, and it was like him as a father trying to watch over his child, or his children, or the children of his friend's children, to, keep them alive, or, punish them. Kind of how he was looking after, his guild members' children, what they made. He was punishing Shalltear for what she did, and he was the only one that had the right to do that, and he didn't want to see, his fellow friends from Nazarick actually kill each other for Ainz. And so Ainz wanted to settle this by himself with no one else kind of intervening and getting in the middle of this fight. And so Ainz goes alone. He is a spellcaster that goes alone to fight the strongest, one of the strongest beings in Nazarick, Shalltear Bloodfallen. And she can use close range and long range attacks. So if you think about this in terms of an RPG, if you're a hardcore gamer, if you love RPGs or MMOs, you have a spellcaster, let's say like a priest or a mage or something, or even a necromancer, warlock, whatever, going up against like a warrior class or paladin or some type of class that could fight up close and has extreme amount of tanking abilities, I think that you would instantly assume who has the advantage, if you think about it, if they're both equal amount of levels. The only way a spellcaster could possibly overpower, I guess a close-range fighter is if they don't have any long range, and also if, the caster can continuously move around without casting any spells and chants and stuff and stay in one location. And that's kind of the situation that Ainz was in while he was fighting Shalltear, because he couldn't really run around, he had to stay and fight, and he was a spellcaster, so if, Shalltear got close to him, it was completely over. So the sense of danger to Shalltear versus Ainz's fight was definitely incredible, and it was definitely the best moment in the series, because until that very point of Overlord, when you're reading the light novel, and even in the anime, if you're still an anime fan, you're watching this for some reason, you have never felt it to where Ainz was in a situation where he couldn't win. For instance, he's always in these situations where you're like, okay, so Ainz is gonna be fine, he's fucking broken, he's overpowered. I mean, he has all this different type of gadgets and shit, and everybody's like, oh my god, there's no way Ainz can lose. But when you got into this fight, you felt like, holy god, there is a really good chance Ainz could lose. And I mean, he almost lost. At the end of the day, he won, but he almost lost. Like, he was pushed. He was really pushed to the limits, and that was crazy just to see someone like him do something like that, just push to that limits. And what it really goes to show you, too, from that fight, is that Ainz is I guess, one of the strongest, or he is the strongest in Nazarick. Now, it's confirmed, because since the light novels, some of the information light novels were cut out of the anime, I know that they're making it to where Ainz has this atmosphere about him to where he's undefeatable. That's the way it's kind of presented in the anime, and also some of the information along with how he feels about, like, his fellow friends in the guild and different things like that, like, you know, how he looks at world-class items, to, you know, how he's kind of very cautious and not trusting of other people, and he tries to figure out what he should do next. I mean, they kind of cut that out from the anime, and that's one of the key components of Ainz' character, and that's one of my only complaints. But to see how Ainz was just, you know, calculating for the entire fight of what he should do and go up against Shaltir, and from seeing him since the beginning of having, like, no challenge and constantly figuring out what he should do next and then just destroying his opponents like nothing, and then all of a sudden coming to this point to where, you know, he's pushed. I like that. I really like that, and it was definitely the best moment so far. I'm in the middle of Volume 4, just to clarify. I'm in the middle of the Lizard arc, the Lizard Village arc. Right now, the army of Ainz just contacted the Lizard Village, and they're about to get raided, and they have to go form some form of allegiances or alliances with other lizard tribes. And that's as far as I've gotten so far into the Volume 4 volume. It's pretty cool so far. I just hope we get to see more dialogue with Shaltir and all them, because I want to see what Shaltir thinks after the aftermath of that fight. Now, speaking of this, okay, the third volume, in conclusion, best volume to date, I think so far I have read, of Overlord. And it's definitely something that will make it to where if you are on the fence about Overlord and you don't know if you like it, it will definitely probably push you onto the fence to where you're like, okay, this is a very good series. And that's kind of how it was for me when I got to that point. I'm like, holy crap. But one of the main reasons why I think I love Ainz so much in the light novels and in this series in general is because he reminds me a lot of the Lich King. I mentioned it before in my anime reviews, but thinking about it now, and thinking about his character, and then what he has at his disposal with the orb, to how he acts, and how he's building his army, it reminds me so much of certain elements of the Lich King. It really does. I mean, he's not exact carbon copy and exactly the same as, you know, Arthas was from World of Warcraft, or Warcraft in general, because Arthas, you know, was a paladin and then fell and became, you know, part of the Scourge. But the thing is, just to see how some character can remind me of my boy Arthas. Arthas was my favorite villain. He's my favorite villain. One of my favorites. When he turned into the Lich King, nostalgia, dude. Just straight up nostalgia. I still cry to this day when I have to take my boy Arthas out in Icecrown Citadel. It makes me sad. And so, to see how Ainz reminds me of Arthas, it's definitely a plus. Because when you have a character that, on the outside, he's kind of good. He's a good guy. We know he's good. But he has this other personality to where he has to put up this atmosphere and presence to where he is a leader figure and he has to get shit done. It's like putting an average civilian that has a very compassionate heart and very kind and nice, and then all of a sudden throwing them into a leadership position where they're a leader of thousands and thousands of monsters, undead, or demons, whatever. They're a leader, and they have to put up this face, because if they don't put up this face, they're gonna get slaughtered by their own men, and they don't want that fucking shit to happen. So, of course, Momonga is in a spot where he has to do stuff like this, which goes into his character of how he calculates, and he's very cautious about what happens around him. And he doesn't want people to actually think he's incompetent and a stupid leader. And that's kind of one of the main personalities of Ainz I've noticed compared to the anime that kind of doesn't show it as well. The only way you could really key in on is some of the dialogue that's said, but it's not really that obvious to the average anime watcher. So that is one fault I see in the anime, but nothing too bad, so to say. But back on topic to the light novel, Ainz as the Lich King, for instance, he's building an army. He wants to ransack the Lizard Village to build an army, stronger undead. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, this guy, Ainz, he's building an undead fucking army. He is building an army of undead. I'm like, what does that remind me of? I'm like, oh my god. So, definitely very cool when I saw that. It was just definitely a plus. And then also in Volume 2, moving over to Volume 2 type stuff, the Clementine Fight. Okay, so, Clementine, brutal. Very, very brutal. Probably one of the most brutal deaths, I think, in the series so far. Like, Ainz breaks Clementine like a Kit Kat bar. He breaks her like a fucking Kit Kat bar, man. He just breaks her. He gives a bear hug and broke her spine and snapped it, and she hit the ground like a lifeless ragdoll. That is brutal as shit, dude. That's brutal. So, I can't wait to see how that's going to be handled as well in the anime, because I do know there is censorship laws, and I mean, stuff like that I don't think might be shown completely. I mean, there has been some very bad things shown on Madhouse's, you know, anime. I mean, look at some of the stuff on Hunter x Hunter. I wonder how they're gonna handle the back-snapping scene with Clementine and stuff, or the scene to where Ainz gets stabbed. Like, you know, he's a skeleton, and in the fight with Clementine, you know, stabs him all over his body and all that, and then, like, she electrifies him in his eye sockets, and then he just pulls out the sword out of his eye socket and stuff. I wonder if they're gonna show that, or if that's gonna be slightly censored in some way, because that is a pretty brutal segment of the volume, and definitely a really good highlight for that volume in general, just to see Ainz reveal herself as the Lich. Like, when you see Clementine realize Ainz is, you know, position of what he was, she's like, "You're a Lich," and she's freaking out and all that, and like, he's a skeleton body. Badass. Just reeks of badass. Now, Hamsuke. I wonder if Hamsuke will eventually get turned into some form of undead being. I wonder about that, because it would be really cool, and it'd be a plus if it does have something like that happen as well. Because you remember, I know I'm going back to the Lich King thing, but you remember Arthas, of how he was a Death Knight, and he killed the dragon, and then he turned him into his pet dragon, remember that? And then when you have to fight that dragon in Icecrown, I wonder if Hamsuke is going to be in a similar way. Hamsuke might be killed and turned into like an undead hamster of some sort. Like, imagine if that would happen, dude. That would be cool. It would really be cool if, you know, Ainz did something like that and made Hamsuke, like, a very fucking strong undead being. Let's just be honest, that'd be badass. So, yeah, I mean, Overlord in general, from what I have read of it so far, definitely a very fun read. It takes a lot to really get me interested in a light novel, so to say. I mean, it has to have a very good story, or something that really interested me, and Overlord's entire core content interests me because it's about games, it's about, you know, an immersive world, like RPG, MMORPG, and I mean, it's always cool to read stuff like that, because it makes me feel nostalgic from the stuff I have played in the past, and to see stuff like this in, like, written language, it allows me to kind of connect with the writer of the series, because it's like the writer was playing games like me, and that's kind of why I love Overlord so much, and kind of why I like, you know, Ainz so much too as a person, just to see how he's like an evil guy, but a good guy at the exact same time. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, not much to say about Volume 4, because it's still building up, and I don't know what direction that's going to go to, besides Ainz turning them into undead lizard men. But besides that, Volume 3, best volume so far. Volume 2, Clementine's Fight, cannot wait to see that in the anime. I wonder how that's going to be handled, and how that's going to be censored. I hope we get to see some core content from Volume 3 as well. I do hope we do get to see that, but to be personally honest, I'd rather have no Volume 3 content if it's going to be rushed. But Madhouse doesn't usually rush things, so I don't really worry about that. I just hope if they're going to put Volume 3 content inside of this anime that's going to have 12 episodes, I hope we don't get it rushed and condensed to where there's things that get cut out. Because there is some good content in Volume 3 that I hope don't get rushed at all, because there's going to be some good shit. So tell me your thoughts in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.